All right. What's up, everybody? It's about 12:10. People are still joining, but it's starting to slow down. So I think we're good. If you haven't introduced yourself in the chat yet, please do. It's awesome to see so many dope people up in here who are so hardworking, and I think that this is going to be really, really good. If you don't want to be on video, please hit stop video because we are recording this session for just like people who have to do these tasks in the future and want basically a reference to refer to. So if you guys don't mind, let's get started so that we can be out of here by around 2. So good to see all of you. All right, so we're from the Buffalo DSA Healthcare Work Group. I'm Mo. I'm the co-chair of the committee, and also here's Jenna, my other co-chair. I think she's going to talk in a little bit. So we're going to talk about how to prepare for a canvassing campaign. First, we're going to go over our analysis and then the parts of a campaign, the different roles that people take in a campaign. And at the end of this, we're going to actually, assign those roles. We're going to go over how to write a rap for canvassing and how to make lit for canvassing, how to cut turf, which is basically that's like slang for where you're walking and what doors you're knocking on, as well as how to set up an Airtable. So whether you're holding like a social event or, you're going to somebody's office or you're having a party, one of our calling parties, or, just a plain old canvas, you sign up for it through something called an Airtable, which is how we keep track of, who wants to lead and who wants to enter data and stuff like that. And an action network, which is where we actually, like how we actually send messages to the offices and gather pledges and such. And then the way that we actually like dispatch and assign everything. Here's a photo from a canvas. That is so cute. Okay, so why is universal healthcare important? Obviously, you can apply the principles that we're talking about in here to a bunch of different ways of campaigning, but we are from the Universal Healthcare Committee, so this is sort of the tack that we take. The reason why Medicare for All specifically is so important for socialists and for DSA is these 5 principles that it meets. It is a single public program instead of the mess of different private companies that control the payment of our healthcare right now. It's comprehensive coverage. So if you need to go receive service from a medical professional, it's covered. It's free at the point of service. One of our slogans is tax the rich, heal the sick. So it's financed through tax contributions based on ability to pay, not shifting costs onto sick people the way that our current medical care system does with cherry picking and lemon dropping. There's no fees, no co-pays, no cost sharing. Those out-of-pocket costs that you're paying right now, those fees. And it's universal coverage for all US residents. So that includes like undocumented people because they live in our state, they live in our country, and right now, I'm just explaining the principle, so I'm not going to get too into arguing that point and why that's so important anyway. But creating this like second class of person based on their immigration status has led to some really, really horrible health inequities and catastrophes, frankly. And also, it focuses on job training and placement assistance for people currently employed by the private health insurance industry. We focus on New York Health Act a lot right here in New York State because it can happen, and it might change the landscape for Medicare for All in a way that we haven't seen since Bernie made Medicare for All his huge rallying cry. And for New York Health Act, the jobs benefits that we are looking at there is how much it increases employment and potential unionization through probably PEF or AFSCME by moving this to a single public sector agency rather than a bunch of different companies. So it actually increases employment greatly, and we see that as a massive benefit. And then more like fundamentally based on principle, universal health care is organizing at the point of distribution, not production, which is work, but distribution and circulation. It's fundamental to a socialist organization like DSA that could aim to lay the groundwork for a workers' party and set the program, which healthcare has always been a part of, that can challenge capital. Most importantly, we don't just do this because it's a moral good and healthcare is a human right. We do this because it strengthens the capacity of working people to organize against capital by providing independence from your job. Right now, you're completely reliant on your job for your healthcare. If you leave, you lose your healthcare. If you organize and get, retaliated against, you lose your healthcare. And if you have a sick kid or if you pay for your own prescriptions, that's catastrophic. So this would strengthen our capacity to fight. It eliminates the capitalist health insurance industry, which acts as a gatekeeper in receiving care and has an entire like business models and niche industries have popped up in the system that has been created here, the for-profit healthcare system. And it is essential for class struggle, but also for solidarity with each other. Medicare for all is one of the most urgent class struggle demands of this time in America. And DSA is different because we're not one of these progressive organizations that receives funding to organize from foundations and grants, which limit those organizations by employing people and attaching them to the 1% symbolic vision of social change. So when you are organizing as part of your career, you have a movement job, under a grant or something like that, you are, sorry, just looking at the chat. You're meeting deliverables that basically the 1% has used, the employing class has used to redirect what could be regular working class oppositional organizing. And so organizations, just associations of regular people who work for a living that are independent and member funded through dues, allow you to take a different approach that's actually oppositional. So we don't just pressure politicians employing a advocacy-based or personal testimony-based, moralizing to them approach. We have to change the conditions for them by having people having organized labor, really get off the sidelines and be like, I'm not going to support you unless you support this massive change. I'm not going to donate to you. I'm not going to vote for you. We do deep community organizing. We knock doors. We connect our demands to our organization and to this philosophy of an organization, of a program, and of a vision for socialism. We do have some electeds down in Albany, some very, very good and very disciplined. And we're not just there to make new laws. They have an emphasis on actually connecting people to doing research for them, to being really involved in their office and their oppositional work. And they emphasize building working class power and attacking key industries. We do not and cannot rely on legislators to do the right thing. That's why the moralizing and personal testimony approach does not work. We got to build a mass movement that gives them no choice. So that's why when we are talking about cutting our turf, you're going to be hearing something that you don't hear from a lot of different organizations. We literally go to their doors. We go to their neighborhood because we don't care. All right. So Jenna, I actually cannot see the speaker notes. So let me know, is this you or me?
So I've got you down until Hijab will come in and talk about the wrap.
Perfect. I'm going to keep going. Okay, so these are the different parts of a campaign. In our last healthcare meeting, we actually voted on these different parts, which it seems tedious, but like I was talking earlier about the importance of democracy and about doing this ourselves, we went through each part of a campaign. So what are we asking people, like, what are we wanting to accomplish? And being really, really specific. So for example, we were like, we want to have a base of people who states, a large base of people who states I will withhold my donations and votes from you unless you meet this demand. Caucus for single payer, and bring it to a floor vote this year. Whether it passes or fails, you will have forced the vote on it. So that is our demand. And then I sort of touched on our strategy there, as well as our targets. Our strategy is to build, an educated base that is willing to withhold support. But our targets are going to be, the people who have the power to give into that demand. So the people who are caucusing, the, union leadership who is going to have to deal with rank and file, wanting a political education session, wanting to release a memo of support for single payer, the state senators, the state assembly members. Opponents are going to be people who, are just never going to be for it. So in the past, we've used, for example, Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield, because they literally have enough money to buy the naming rights to the Bills Stadium. And the CEO makes an obscene amount of money. And so we looked into, what do local health insurers, CEOs, make during the year of COVID. Of course, that has only continued. And so we're going to keep looking into, what are people who are never, ever going to be for this? So like health insurers is probably the big one there. How are they profiting off of this? And how can we use that to inoculate people against their propaganda? Our strategy, our plan to win, our overarching method. So like I sort of touched on, our strategy is to build a base of people who are politically educated on single payer healthcare and who are willing to withhold support. And our tactics to get those people, meet those people, are going to be, what we voted on was canvases, like door-to-door canvases, brokering with rank and file union members and holding political education sessions, phone banks, calling parties to recontact people who we've talked to and bring them into the organization and, keep involving them in the campaign. So those are the concrete actions of this campaign. And then our allies are, the people who also support this and will actively help you win, even if they have different strategies and tactics. We see this a lot with organizing, people just take sort of a different approach, but they want the same thing. So, we're part of a regional hub that NISNA, the Nurses Association, runs through the campaign funds through the Campaign for New York Health. And even if we have a different approach than many of those organizations, those are allies, And then here are the different roles of a campaign that we'll assign. And this is what makes our stuff go round. And we really built this up out of just sort of meeting up and gathering signatures at busy intersections in Buffalo. And now we've really figured out how to build that out. So what we need, the people who we need to help out, are people who are rap and literature leads, who will update our print materials, write our canvassing reps, so what we actually say when we talk to people. So if you're good at writing, consider taking on that role. If you like graphics, consider taking on that role. Our tech leads, people who can create sign-up forms on Airtable and Action Network. Our turf leads, if you like maps and working with the data, you have to have special permissions to do this, but this is who actually makes our walking routes. If you're a very experienced canvasser, I think you would be great to be a turf lead, because you know what it's like to be like, walking these routes and splitting them up as a lead. Canvas leads are assigned on an as-needed basis based on your availability. They're volunteers who bring the materials, the bag, they coordinate the walking route that they've got, and they brief the volunteers on the campaign during canvasses. We have data entry leads. They enter the signatures who sign on to our demand and express interest in DSA into a log for the group to recontact. And then we also have dispatchers. Me and Jenna and Daly have been taking this on, the chairs and secretaries, but I'm totally willing to have other people, take this on where you schedule the canvases and the voted on plan, and the different days that we're going out. I think we're going to do some of this today, like actually set our days through the beginning of June, and our days for calling parties and such, and then assign the leads and assign the data entry based on people's availability. Last thing, so we also have so this is just sort of going into the literature lead. We obviously need to be giving people something to illustrate our demand when we're out there. So this is some examples of what we've used in the past. You want to clearly and briefly describe your demands on your print materials and why somebody would want to work on confronting your target alongside you. Add your link. We usually add shortened links that your tech lead has generated. And our lit lead for the last campaign, Cassidy, even used a QR code on these. We always use union printing. I did not know how QR code works, but you just highlight it and it takes you to the thing. So cool. But see how it's very, very brief here. Like, what's the problem? The New York State Assembly refused to bring universal health care to a vote last session despite having the votes to pass it. 1 million New Yorkers are uninsured. Over half can't afford care. They get rich, we get sick. We can cover everyone and yet have it cost less for our state and cut out this private profit. We have to show them that we're serious. You need to pledge to never support an elected official who fails to champion universal health care. So they can either, scan this and do it themselves, like if they don't have time to, sign and talk to us right now, or they want to think about it for a little bit first. And if they want to write a personal message on it, then of course they should scan and do it themselves. Or if they want to just sign on and have the data entry person enter it in, they can do that. What I like about the Tax the Rich one was this was a more direct pressure campaign that was statewide, had a script for calling the offices right on it. I don't support cuts to our social programs, hospitals, clinics, or schools. Tax the rich, save our state. And saying that this is from, Buffalo DSA. So this is going to be a little bit different every time. If you like making stuff like this and can help make stuff like this, we'll probably use something similar to what's on the left, but updated it a little bit. And I think we should also maybe make for each one of our targets a little half sheet with a script, where you can directly call. Because we don't have India Walton campaign this time around, so we're going to have like a bigger lit budget, because we don't have multiple things going on. So yeah, consider taking on that role. And I'm going to kick it to Hijab.
Hello, I'm Hijab. So basically, I'm going to talk about the anatomy of campaign wrap. But before and we're going to use the New York Health Act wrap as an example. But before I start, I just wanted to, as I was reflecting on this, coming up to this work group or this working session, I was thinking about what I think we do really well in our Canvas wraps. And there were two things that stood out to me, which I've been thinking about as I think about how we're going to update them this time. The first is, obviously DSA has multiple working groups. Sometimes we collaborate with other organizations like we did for the Walton campaign. And I think it's really good to demonstrate cohesion and continuity across materials. I think it makes it clean, and I think it makes it easy to follow when you're talking to anybody. So for example, when the Walton campaign was going on, obviously the healthcare work group was doing our New York Health Act stuff. Electoral was also preparing their own materials for the campaign. And so I was working on the healthcare wrap specifically. And when we were updating it to reflect some of our Walton asks as well, so that no matter who we talked to, we could do a New York Health Act ask and at the end a Walton ask. And so I think I pulled points directly from the Walton campaign website that I thought aligned best with our goals as well. And then it made it like easy to explain to a person why we were asking them to support the Walton campaign as we were making our New York Health Act asks. It's like an easy way to get the foot in the door if they agree with you on single payer. And then when electoral was preparing their own campaign material, they used those same like 3 or 4 topics to build out their asks as well. So I thought that was nice and cohesive. And if anyone wanted to know what were Buffalo DSA's like 4 points that we were making an ask of, it was like very clear to follow. And then the other really useful and really critical variable, I think, in preparing canvassing materials is obviously people who canvass are going to have different levels of familiarity and comfort with the material. So it's really important to have a very clean and easy to follow reading material for people to review before they get to the canvas, but also when they're doing it. So if someone asks a question about a policy, having like 1 or 2 bullets prepared like right in front of the person for them to easily follow down and say, this is the answer to that, I think is really important. A very clear, like, I think if anyone's phone banked, it's like basically what happens when you phone bank. A little piece of information will pop up when you click something, or like they say yes, you click yes, and then you get information at your fingertips to give them for the next step. We do the same thing. You have to do the same thing for a written canvas wrap. Okay, so let's look at the kind of anatomy of a canvas wrap. This is for the New York Health Act. The first part is when you're just talking to somebody. This is the introduction. You want the canvasser to speak about 70% and the person you're talking to speak about 30%. You want to make them feel comfortable, and you want to share details, obviously, up front about who you are and why you're talking to them. So this is an example from the New York Health Act wrap. Hi, my name is Hijab. We're with Buffalo DSA. I'm out knocking doors to talk about universal health care. Have you heard about the New York Health Act? It would introduce single payer in New York State, essentially a statewide Medicare for all. So like this is when you kind of gauge how familiar they are. And then if they're not familiar, as you can see here, we have like clean, easy to read bullets. This is what the New York Health Act does. This is what it doesn't do. If we pass it, this is what we get. This is why it's important. So that's the beginning. And I think this was probably the hardest for me when I first started canvassing, was like, how do you start talking to somebody? So I think when you're writing the rap, this is like really important to have bullets down cleanly. Okay, Mo, can you go to the next slide, or whoever's doing it?
I did.
Okay, this is my favorite part of the canvas. When you are talking about the issues, the canvasser ideally will only speak like 30%, and the person you're talking to should speak the most. And I think this is where the hook really is. This is where you're getting them to think about why this is going to be so critical to them. This, for me, and I think for everybody who's done New York Health Act canvassing, is like the easiest and most interesting part, because everybody is going to everybody has a stake in this. This is the part where you learn about how the issue personally affects that person's life and figure out details about why they would want to get involved. It's really the easiest thing to start this part of the conversation. Like, have you ever had a hospital bill that just like knocked you on your butt? Like, have you had to make sacrifices to pay your bills? Have you had to ration your medications? And sometimes people will just share like the most horrifying stories about their own families or their friends. And this is really important because this is where they get really drawn into the conversation. If they like the idea of the New York Health Act or single payer, you can ask them to talk more about that. If they share an injustice, but they don't really have like a formed opinion on why it happened, you can ask them if they think it's fair. If they're skeptical, obviously just ask them about their experience with health insurance. And if they have good insurance, and this obviously will happen with some of the people, you can ask them if they know how much their employer spends to insure them. You can ask them if they've ever had to switch jobs, or if they've ever been worried about switching jobs. Ask them about their neighbors' experiences. So that's the issue section. Okay, and then inoculation. So this is kind of 50%, both of you are going to be speaking. This is where you are positioning yourself alongside each other. So for the New York Health Act, our goal in this section is create an enemy, make it clear to the person that their suffering is caused by another person or corporation or politician, and you are demonstrating, and they are demonstrating that that is unfair. They're being compelled to fight. So our canvas wrap for this section in our example with the New York Health Act, we have content like this, like for-profit insurance companies make billions, regular people struggle to afford coverage, we're going to have to commit to fighting them. And then this is really great, like you draw it very local, like locally, Blue Cross Blue Shield is wealthy enough to buy naming rights to the Bills Stadium. Do you think they're going to let us move to single payer without a fight? Like, no, exactly. They're getting rich, we're getting sick, they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to fight this, they already have. And then you start drawing it to your ask, which is the New York legislature refused to bring the New York Health Act to a vote in the last session, even though for the first time it has the votes to pass in both the state assembly and Senate. We can't let this happen again. So at this point, the person has hopefully bought into what you're asking. They understand why it's so important for them. And now you've created like a shared enemy to fight against. So that's the inoculation section. And then vision, like what are we doing moving forward? Why am I talking to you? And again, you kind of take on the role in this section. So you speak a little bit more, you articulate a clear path to social change that the person can imagine themselves participating in now that it is clear what we are up against. And then your talking points for this section is going to be stuff like specific things, like who are we targeting? Sean Ryan has not committed to getting this legislation out of committee and voting yes by co-sponsoring it yet. Tim Kennedy, Pat Burke, like ask them who their legislator is. They've all co-sponsored, but they haven't fought to make it happen. This is when they'll be in session. This is what we want to do. We need to build a mass movement of pressure to give them no choice so they can't delay any longer. So that's the vision section. And then the ask, right? So you've done all these steps, you've built up to this moment, and then this is the ask. Like you want the person to take the next step to participate in your campaign. Are you willing to fight to help us win the New York Health Act? If they say no, I think the easiest thing is always just to tie it back to whatever stories they brought up when they're sharing their experiences with healthcare. If they say, sometimes people are going to be like completely uninterested in talking to you, and then you just, it's fine. But if they demonstrate that they have some personal connection to this, you can draw on that. If they say yes, they're willing to support, then you have to be very clear and very succinct with what your asks are. So please sign the pledge sheet. Please make the demand. Here on our very useful and handy and pretty canvassing material that we are handing to you, you can just go to this QR code. And if you want to write your own letter, you can do it there. Here's the phone number for you to call their office. And then if you want to volunteer, if they seem like friendly, you can ask if they want to volunteer and come and canvass with you. And then if they are amenable, you can talk about DSA and say, are you interested? And then get their contact info. And also, are you a union member? With the ask section, I think I really like when we discuss this in our material in our meetings as we're prepping for campaigns, because I think you do have to be very strategic about what you're asking people to do and not ask for too much or take up too much of their time, but also make it clear why each one of your asks is so important. So that's the ask section. And then this is the last bit, and this ties a little bit into having kind of a cohesive campaigns across work groups or organizations. You should be able to connect the campaign to other issues that the person might agree with. Like if they're not into single payer, maybe they are into labor, or they're in a union, or they have struggled with job loss or wealth inequality. Maybe they're struggling with affording paying their electricity bill. So you should be able to tie those issues together for the person. That's another way to get them on board. And you, of course, you want to discuss DSA as an organization, assess how they feel towards us. And then for every canvas, whenever you're anywhere at any door, you want to have materials with you that can help with like practical current things that the person might be facing. So like having hand sanitizer with you, having masks, having public assistance materials in our very nice canvassing bag if people need to get hooked up with SNAP or like Medicaid or anything like that. So that's, I think, also really important to have on hand. Yeah, I think that's
so much, Ajab. Yeah, so we're going to move on to talking about turf now. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Stephen because he's able to get some really good screenshots for this. So one of the first things you're going to want to ask yourself when you're starting out cutting turf is how many dates are you cutting turf for? How many pieces of lit do you have? And that's going to be determined because of that lit budget that Mo was talking about earlier. It needs to be cleared by steering first. So that'll determine how much lit you have. How many targets do you want to hit? So as part of that initial conversation we have, who are our targets going to be? like, whose constituents are we going to be knocking on the doors of and speaking with and educating? And then finally, how many days per week are you planning on canvassing? So once you've asked those questions and answered them, you can do some math to figure out how many doors you'd be able to hit per canvassing session, and based upon how much lit you have, the number of targets you have, the amount of volunteers you think you can secure. And then just at the end, you want to make sure you clear that with steering or chairs. Okay, so then you're going to want to go ahead and look at a calendar and pick some dates. As you're picking out those dates, make sure that you're factoring in holidays, Bills games, other DSA events, events held by partners, anything that would affect when we can actually hold those canvassing dates. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and identify the turf area. So you're going to want to go into SmartVan, and what you'll want to do is click on Quick Lookup for your target. So whatever targets you identified previously, so quick look them up and select their profile. And just quickly, you'll notice that when you're searching it, it's good if you enter their middle initial, because that'll narrow it down. This is going to be a lot of options. So if you can find their middle initial when you're doing the quick lookup, that'll help you select them quickly. And Mo, can you briefly go forward so I can show them the quick lookup? Okay, so you'll see right there on the screen, that's what the quick lookup button right in the middle will look like. Okay, could you please go back? All right, thanks. So once you've quick looked up your target, you're going to want to select the districts drop-down menu, and that'll tell you which election district they're in. So for example, Buffalo Nor 02. And that doesn't really mean a lot to you, just seeing the district's name, Buffalo Nor 02. But if you Google the district election map in the Erie County, Erie County district election maps, you can look up all the election maps for every region, and then you'll see what corresponds to Buffalo Nor 02. So you can see the exact streets, the exact borders around it, and you'll have an idea of where that is in Buffalo. Okay, please go forward. Thank you. So once again, yeah. So then what you'll do then is create a new list in Van. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new folder. You want everything to be organized and in the right spot. So create a campaign specific folder. So you might say, this campaign is New York Health Act, winter 2022 or spring 2022. Just make sure that you make that folder and share the folder with the chair of the working group so that they have access to everything you're doing there. Once you've made that folder, you're going to click Create New List, and we'll show that in a minute. And it's important to note that you're going to do this for each target one at a time. We're going to have one list with every target in there. So let's say we've got 4 targets. We're going to have a list for each target at once. So create a new list for your target and select that election district that we wrote down previously. And you can also select some surrounding districts because they're still close by. So you can use a map for guidance and just kind of estimate it. Just make sure that you include the original election district. So once you've done that, you're going to want to narrow down the list. So we're not knocking on every single door in that region. You're going to want to narrow it down by party. So, depending on your campaign and what you're looking for and the people you're having conversations with, you could possibly uncheck people who are conservative or Republican. You may also want to filter people out by voting history. So if you might want people who have demonstrated that they are voting and they are active. So if they have voted in primaries in the last 5 or 6 years, or if they've recently voted in the general or midterm elections. So after that, you'll click Preview List and click Cut Turf. So could you go forward, please? All right, so this shows how you're going to select districts. And then on the right, you'll see that's how you select parties. So unchecked is conservative, unchecked is, I think that's workers, entity, and then unchecked is libertarian, unchecked is Republican. So those are people you will not be knocking on the doors of. And then at the middle bottom of the screen, you'll see that's how you select people based on their voting activity. Okay. So then
I
mapping
think it
out.
actually says Women's Equality Party is unchecked.
Okay, I couldn't see that as well. Yeah, I was like, is that workers entity? Interesting.
So we would definitely check a party that said workers entity. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. But for everyone's information, Jenna is now canceled. Just kidding. Stephen, who made the screenshots, is canceled. Oh man, these are good, Stephen. Great job.
Women's Equality Party. Okay, so could you go next? All right, so then you're going to be mapping out the turf. So we'll show the next. Actually, could you briefly go forward? Okay, so all the dots you see on that screenshot are the people who meet that criteria, who are not in the Women's Equality Party, who are who are politically active, who meet whatever party criteria we've selected and are within that region. So those dots all represent those people. All right, could you go back, please? Thank you. So you're going to draw a rectangle around those dots, the people who meet the criteria, and to create a turf for the canvassing session. So make sure that the section includes where the target lives. Like for sure you want to be knocking on the target's door. So just draw a rectangle by creating little dots. It doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle or a perfect square because you can do a number of dots to get a little bit of weird shape. But when you want to close it off, make sure you click on the dot that you started with, and that's how you close it. Check how many numbers of doors are in that area. We typically want to do somewhere between 80 and 120. That's just like a manageable amount. You don't have to hit every door in a canvassing session, but it's good to have, an amount that's achievable and not, unachievable. So once you have checked that the number of doors is between 80 and 120, hit save, and then click on the area, and then that means the turf is done, it's cut. You can map out a couple of other options just in case, we have a ton of volunteers one day and we finish the turf and we've still got time. So you might want to do an extra turf. So map out some more options, hit save and finish. Once you've done that, select Save My Map Region to the designated folder that we made earlier. And when you save that map region, name it, target option 1 or target option 2, the name of the target, not just target, so that it's organized and you know exactly whose turf that corresponds to. Could you go next, Mo? Okay, so that's just showing you, again, those little dots are the people who meet our criteria. That's someone starting to make that turf, hasn't been closed yet. And you'll see Save My Map Region over here. You're going to save it to the correct folder. So if you didn't make a folder earlier, you can do like a new folder. You can press folder and select the folder you made earlier, like New York Health Act campaign spring 2022. And then you'll just cut turf and you'll be saved. Okay, so how to get list information. So when you're in My Turfs, you'll see that you've got a list of turfs there. You will select the little box to the left of the list and then select Print List. On the next page after you click Print, there's going to be options for, like, is it going to be a walking list or is it going to be a map? You want to print the map, you don't want to print the people, and you want the walking list. Once you've done that and you select print, you're going to get a PDF with the list numbers for each turf. And that is the PDF that you carry at each canvas. It has the list numbers, it has the target name, it has the wrap, it has the map, and that's very vital when you're out there canvassing because that is the list number that you put into Minivan and tells you which doors you're going to knock on. As far as selecting a meetup place, you're going to look at that map on the PDF and pull up the region on Google Maps. It'll show you where there are stoplights, A stoplight's a little bit of a busier intersection. That might be a good spot to start at. Or you could find a parking lot, a park, a monument, anything that you think would be a good area to meet up within that turf. Yes, you do upload the route. So then you can use that sign up sheet in Airtable to figure out who the participants would be for each area, who the leads could be, who the dispatcher is, and then you can get started organizing. Would you go next? Yeah, so this is how it looks when you select print. So you'll see report format. You want to select walking list. The script that you can upload, that's the wrap. Contacted how by community canvas, make sure you select that. And then you want, over on the right, you'll see there's an option to print people. You don't want to print people, you want to print map. So make sure you select that. And then you could just select print. Okay. And now I'm gonna pass it over to Stephen, who is going to explain to us how to set up an Airtable.
Hey everybody, my name's Stephen and I'm the chapter treasurer, which means I love spreadsheets. And usually I just latch on to Google Sheets because it's nice and easy, but Mo turned me on to Airtable after her last NIHA campaign, excuse me. And it's a really powerful tool and I'm really excited about it. So you get quite a bit of usage out of it with a free account. So I'd highly recommend if you're going to be running a campaign or you want to just get onto the chapter account, that's fine. But you can set up your own account and have a lot of options available for managing this. So you can see here, Airtable is broken down from workspaces and into bases. So I use basically just two, one for the treasury and one for electoral campaigns. And you can differentiate your entries based on that. Next slide, please. The most useful feature and probably what you'll probably use Airtable for the most is the form. You can create a really nice form that can have attachments if you need, but mostly you're going to be asking people for their name, email, what dates they're available on canvases, and if they can be a shift leader for you. There's a few options. You can't really remove anything without getting rid of the Airtable Pro stuff, but it still lets you do a lot even though it's the free version. So this shows you a little bit of the actual on the left there. This is what it looks like to build it out. You can see the panel for adding a form option, all the radio buttons. It'll give you a bunch of different options for how you want to display it. And then on the right, it'll give you the link and exactly what it looks like when you build out the form. So you can go right back to grid view. On the left, you'll see the views panel. And that's where you can look at all the different visualization options for Airtable. If you go into grid, you can have the form entries either directly imported, or if you get an in-person sign up, you can just add it right directly into the form itself with all the information. You can then use that information that people submit to break the canvassers down by dates, break them down by whether they can act as shift leads, or any other ask that you had of people if you wanted people with specific skills and that kind of thing. Next slide, please. Automations is a little complicated, but they have gotten actually really good at setting it up so it basically does it for you. And really the only one I've used is email confirmations, but they've added a lot more, I think, in the last few months. Next slide, please. I think it shows more of, yeah, so this is actually the process of setting it up. It's pretty intuitive. As soon as a form is submitted, it recommends this for you. You just click on it. You just click on the form and then you can set all the options. It'll come from a Gmail account. You can actually take the email that the user submitted and it'll go right to them. I usually CC the Buffalo DSA account just to make sure all the information's going somewhere central. And then there are a bunch of markup options that we can discuss. It's a little more advanced, though. You really don't need a whole lot. Ultimately, you're going to be taking the information from the Airtable and giving it to your dispatcher, your shift leads, the people who are going to actually coordinate the volunteers and get them out onto the canvas or the phone bank or whatever you're doing. Next slide, please.
Oh wait, I wanted to say something really fast. In our last meeting when we were planning this, people were concerned it wouldn't say like the dates you signed up for on the email that you got. And we want to start reminding, like having the dispatcher remind people like what they signed up for, like the month it occurs regardless. But it looks like in the email that you wrote, you put like a little way for that to populate, right?
Yep, you just click on that blue plus sign in the box over there and it'll give you the list of options.
Awesome. So we'll keep doing that, but then we'll also add like monthly reminders.
Definitely. And you can have, I don't think the automations are limited at all. It's really nice. I haven't used these a whole lot, but they do look helpful when I was building out these screenshots. Just a great way to view the different options, different form entries you submit. And that's basically Airtable in a nutshell. It's a bit of a learning curve, thanks. And once you get the hang of it, though, it's pretty fun.
All right, thanks so much, Stephen. Yeah, just like he mentioned, once you set up that Airtable, it gives you a lot of data that is really easy for the leads and the dispatchers to use to figure out who signed up for what and when. I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about how to set up the action network. For each campaign is a little bit different, how many action networks we have. I know in previous times we've had like 3 or 4 for one campaign. In our most recent one, I think we just had 2. But I'm gonna go through how you might set up an action network for a pledge, which we have done pretty consistently in our campaigns. First thing you're going to need is an administrator of the Buffalo DSA Action Network group to give your personal account administrator access to the group. So once you've gotten that, you'll have access to create events for Buffalo DSA. So just go ahead and go to Action Network, log into your personal account as usual, and you'll see that once you've been given access, in the top right of your screen, there's a drop-down menu for Go to a Group. And you're going to go ahead and select Buffalo DSA. Next slide, thank you. Once you have selected Buffalo DSA, it'll take you to a page where you've got options to create a sponsored action. You'll see there's a lot of different action types. So depending on what you're doing in that campaign, you'll select whatever best fits. So if you have an event, you go ahead and select event. If you're doing, a letter campaign, you can give information on that letter campaign. But for us, if we're doing a pledge, what we would select is petition. So you'll see petition is kind of on the left there. And then we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So once you've selected petition, this is what it would look like when you're filling it in. So you can go ahead and title it. And right there in that option that says, who are you petitioning? That is where you're going to fill in the targets that you identified earlier. And so once you've filled in all of the targets and all of the, oh, so Ariane, the reason why that wouldn't show up on your drop-down menu yet is because you haven't been added as an administrator. So if you are someone who's in charge of the campaign, of setting up the action network, the administrator will give your account access. So if you're not seeing that yet, it's simply because you haven't been given access to that. But if you are doing it, this is how it would look. So when you create the petition, you'll make sure you fill in all the required fields. Okay, could you go to the next one? Thank you. This part is, I feel like, easy to forget. It's the thank you page. And what you can do here is add any additional steps that petitioner should take. So on some campaigns, we have multiple action networks. This would be a great point to link them to those other action networks. So if they need to also call the representative, or if we want to link the Airtable so they can send it to volunteer with us, or if there's another one for emailing them or sending letters, or if we've got an event that we want them to show up to, just make sure that you link them here so that they can go to that and take the next required action. And then at the very end, you'll select Save and Publish in the bottom right. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the dispatch lead, which I know that we've referred to a couple of times. Mo has done before, I've done before, Daly has done before, just depending on how you want to distribute the roles in your campaign when you're setting it up. You can decide who will be the dispatch lead. And so what the dispatch lead is doing is assigning the Canvas lead for each Canvas and the data entry lead. So what you'll do is this dispatch lead will go into the Airtable and figure out who has volunteered for what. They are going to text the Canvas and data entry lead or email them to confirm that they are okay to, they volunteered on the Airtable, just confirm that they're actually available and able to lead or do data entry for that. The dispatch lead is going to contact participants who signed up to remind them at the beginning of the month and the afternoon before the Canvas. So like we mentioned earlier, people sign up for Canvases, typically a month or two ahead of time, and they may have forgotten what they signed up for. So March 1st, you just want to email everyone and say, okay, these are the people who signed up for March 13, March 14, just so that they know exactly which dates they are responsible for showing up to Canvas. And then the really important one is the afternoon before each Canvas. And we'll talk a little bit more about the afternoon before email later. Make sure that you could you go back? Thanks. So the way that you're going to determine who has volunteered for what Canvas and whether to be data or Canvas lead is to use the filter in Airtable. So at the very top row, there is a filter option. The filter should say where, and you'll click the drop down and select events has any of. And in the events drop down, it'll show you all of the days that we have selected for canvassing. And you'll have on off toggles. So only toggle on the event that you're dispatching for. So whatever canvas is in question. So it's the March 12 canvas, toggle it on, and then it'll show you all of the applicants who said, yes, I'm going to come to that event. So if you look at everyone who said that they'll come to that event, you can see who has volunteered to lead and who has volunteered to do data entry. And so by narrowing it down that way, you can decide, okay, I want this person to lead and I want this person to do data entry. Okay, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. All right, so once you've selected the lead and the data entry person, you're going to want to send an email. So this is the email that goes out the day before the canvas in question. So you can send this to all of the participants who are going to be, showing up to Canvas. So make sure you just mention it like, hi gang, Ryan Stepien or whoever it is will be the lead for the Canvas on, say the date, say the time, who it's targeting. So let's say targeting Sean Ryan's constituents. His phone number is, so just make sure you include the lead's phone number or their email or both right there. We also like to link all of the bit.lys to the different action networks. So it'll include like the pledge that we want people to sign. We might have a link to the wrap, a link to the phone calls so that they can be as prepared as possible before they show up to Canvas. And you'll notice it also has the meetup information so that they know where to meet. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so what you're also going to want to do is after you send out that email to everyone the afternoon before the Canvas, send a list of the participants to the Canvas and data entry lead. And that's so that the Canvas lead knows who is going to be showing up and they can start a group text with everyone. And you want that group text going on so that if anyone gets lost or if anyone's going to be showing up late, everyone can communicate within that group text. After the Canvas is done, the data entry person is going to put the pledges into the sheet that we prepared and email the secretary any new people who are interested in receiving the newsletter, or so that we can add them to the text banking contact list. And if they get anyone who says they're interested in joining DSA, we can follow up with them. If anyone has volunteered to become a volunteer, then we'll directly text them to keep up that communication afterwards. And then one of the final things you're going to want to do, but very important thing to do, is to pack the bag. So we have a huge Make a Difference Canvas bag that we fill with pens, markers, the physical pledge sheets that people sign, extra copies of our wrap, the campaign lit, DSA lit, clipboards. Yes, we have a beautiful photo of us actually setting up that bag. I think I can't even remember when that was taken. I want to say like a few months ago. But there's a lot of stuff that we keep in that bag and it's always getting updated. Like very recently, we added those high visibility vests because we were canvassing late at night and it was getting dark. So just for safety, we wanted to have that on. It also makes you look more official. People are more likely to answer the door to people with vests. So yes, just make sure that everything that you might need when you're canvassing is in that bag, and then go out and have a good campaign.